Start. সাড়ে ছটা বেজেছে।
ক্যালকাটা ক্লাবের বুক লঞ্চ হচ্ছে, তাই আমি জয়েন করেছি। বুক লঞ্চ হচ্ছে, হ্যাঁ, ছবি উঠছে না।
Should I start?
হ্যাঁ, আমাদের রঞ্জু অমিতাভ চৌধুরী, বুঝতে চৌধুরী।
Good evening. I welcome all the participants and viewers to the 15th virtual session of the Calcutta Club. Today, we are here to discuss the book Ajay and His Tales of Faraway Lands, written by Dr. Amitav Chaudhary and published by Exceller Books, Kolkata in 2021. We are honored to have the author amongst us to present his life's varied experiences through his writing. I'm sure Dr. Chaudhary will be glad to answer any questions that the audience may have. One can post questions on the chat box, and audience questions will be shared by Chaitali Chaudhary. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Chaudhary to our viewers. Dr. Chaudhary graduated in engineering from the IIT Kharagpur and received his master's degree in business management from the University of Wales, Cardiff, UK. His doctorate in e-commerce applications is from the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi. Dr. Chaudhary has worked for the United Nations, the World Bank, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and national governments for about 40 years. He has visited about 70 countries and lived for long periods in Southern, Central, and East Africa, the Caribbean, South and Central Asia, Europe, and Middle East. His book is a collection of 10 short stories set in different parts of the world, where resources are usually limited, but human values and principles are not. This book is the classic example of a globetrotter translating his real-life experiences into fiction. His stories cover a huge landscape from the most advanced countries of the world in the West to the least developed ones in Africa, where he has been on critically important assignments, official and private, national and international, as an industrial expert. The author seems to have an extraordinary ability to relate to all cultures, religions, and ethnicities with equal ease. As one critic has stated, Dr. Chaudhary has managed to capture the social and cultural nuances of each of these countries in which the tales are set. Sensitively portrayed and exquisitely written, it makes the reader want for more. Let me now introduce Dr. Anjan Chakraborty, who will be conversing with the author. A postgraduate in economics, MBA, and PhD in business management with specialization in marketing, Dr. Chakraborty is presently the founder director of Messrs. All Wave Consultancy, a management consultancy organization undertaking marketing research for companies such as Exide, Philips, Birla Corporation, KPMG, Ernst & Young, etc. He is also connected to the academia as a faculty in the management group of the Department of Commerce, St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and a guest lecturer at the Department of Business Management, Calcutta University. He has lectured in various management institutes in India and also at the SP Jain Management Institution in Singapore. Dr. Chakraborty is also a member of the Energy and Environment Committee of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. I'm glad to convey that this is the first time we are streaming the session on Facebook. Recording on Calcutta Club YouTube will be available later. Over to you, Dr. Chakrabarti, to carry on the program with the author, Dr. Amitabh Chaudhary. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka Chaudhary. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This evening, we have assembled on a virtual platform on the release of the book titled Ajay and His Tales from the Faraway Lands, written by Dr. Amitabh Chaudhary. I consider it to be a privilege for me to moderate the question and answer session with regard to the release of this book. And I'm thankful to the Library Subcommittee and its chairman, and of course, to the president of the Calcutta Club for giving me the opportunity to moderate this program. This book is a collection of 10 touching short stories penned by Dr. Chaudhary, which depicts the merger of history and geography of his travels across the different countries. As you have been already told, that at the end of the session, we would take certain questions from the audience. So viewers, do not hesitate to put your questions in the chat box. Now, to Dr. Amitabh Chaudhary, the author. Good evening, Dr. Chaudhary.
Good evening, and thank you very much, and good evening to everyone.
At the outset, let me ask you, you are a technocrat, and you also worked as a bureaucrat in the UN as the International Trade Advisor. How is it that you have decided to write a book of short stories?
Well, like everyone else, this last 1 year has been a very difficult time for me with severe restrictions on my movements. But this slowdown also gave me an opportunity to look back quietly on my life and my work and the many things that have made me happy. I've always loved traveling, and I realize that my work has given me the opportunity to travel more than I could ever imagine. I traveled to over 70 countries. I lived in South Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, many parts of Africa, Europe, and the Caribbean. A friend of mine, we met after our college reunion last year, mentioned to me, he said, Amitabh, you are a writer in college. Why don't you write? Think of all the places you've been to. Started me thinking, and I tried to recollect incidents that made an impression on me during my travels. I recollected details, and very soon I had stories in my mind which I could put down on paper. But I realized that these stories are different stories. They are not necessarily connected, and they are separated by time and space. So I realized that they were actually a collection of short stories in my head, in my mind. And this resulted in my writing this book of short stories, Ajay and His Tales.
But why now? Why so late in life? You could have done it earlier also.
Of course, I could have done it earlier, but as I said, when you write, you need time, you need opportunity, you need the urge, you need encouragement, and you must have stories in your mind. So if you have all this, you can write it at any time. So I could have written it in my 60s, but then right from the time I graduated in 1970 till about a few years ago, I never had a day's respite from work. So the question of writing it earlier simply didn't enter my mind. So I wrote it now. I didn't think that I was a 70-year-old writing the story. I was a person writing the story. Another point I want to make is the 70s are a very productive period. You can do a lot of work in your 70s. So writing in your 70s is nothing. So it's never too late.
How do you describe the short stories? Are they your travel stories?
Well, I would not call them travel stories in the strict sense of the word. They are stories about love and hope. They are stories about people who live in countries where resources are limited. They are always limited, but their values, their principles are in plenty. They are not. They lead simpler lives. They are happy with less and do the best that is possible. They make the best of it. So I would say that this would be the description of the stories.
What is the source of your stories, Dr. Chaudhary?
The source of the stories are people. I never went about collecting details because I never knew I would write a story. But they are from people. They are from colleagues in offices around the world. They are from friends from faraway places. They are from basically information from interactions during travels at airports, during game drives, in the market, at various places. Ordinary people who shared their experiences and their aspirations with me spontaneously. Perhaps because they felt that I was interested in them and I would like to listen to them. That is the reason they came up with this information and about their experiences, which I remembered and recollected it later. So their stories, the sources are ordinary people.
Your stories are based in countries as different as Mongolia, Jordan, Zimbabwe, Zanzibar, Botswana, Rwanda. Is there any common thread among the stories that you wish to communicate?
Well, as I said, the stories are very different from each other and they are in different countries and at different times. So to find the common thread, I think the only common thread is the author. The author is basically the common thread among all the stories, and the stories reflect to an extent his values, his thought processes, and the way he presents them. So if you ask for a common thread, I would say that the common thread is meeting life's various challenges and eventually realizing the essential goodness of life. You meet the challenges and you work and you struggle and you find that it's not so bad after all, it's good. So that is what the common thread is in all the stories.
How would you classify the stories?
How would I classify the stories? Now, I would classify them as inspirational travel stories. They are inspirational travel stories. And as you know, they say that when you travel, you discover new places, but you also discover yourself. So let us say that they are inspirational travel stories. That is their classification.
Dr. Chaudhary, if I ask you to describe the stories in one line, could you do that?
No,
what would you say?
Not so easy. Okay. Now, the stories, I will try in one line. Stories take you on the journey of life. A journey we all have to undertake. It is different for different people, but it is a journey of life, a journey we all have to undertake. So that, I think, would sum up in one line the stories.
Dr. Chaudhary, I have gone through your book in one go. Those are fascinating stories, I would tell. I really liked it. And of course, they were very, very interesting. Now, I believe that the characters that you have used are all real and not fictitious in any way. Did you pick up any fictitious character?
Not really. They're all real, but their names have been changed and the circumstances have changed. But they are basically real life stories, real life people.
But it is your story, actually, Dr. Chaudhary. And you are writing the book about your travels around the different countries. But why did you use the name of Ajay to narrate the stories? What was behind that? Who is this Ajay?
Well, Ajay is actually my adopted son. 9 years old now. So when he sees the book on the table, he asks me sometimes, quite mystified, Baba, why is my name on the book? He has no idea. He has no idea of what's going on. But then why I used his name? Look, I wanted to use my name but for some reason I didn't feel like it. So I looked around for another name and it is Ajay's name that came up because he's always in our minds. So it's Ajay, the central character.
Shall we go now about the stories individually so that you can tell the audience what you wanted to say about this, individually? Say, for example, the first story. In the first story, the telephone call. You talk about a telephone operator in Mongolia who tries to repay a debt which does not exist. How can that be?
A telephone operator in Mongolia tries to repay a debt which does not exist. It can happen. But before I go into it, let me talk about the country of Mongolia. It is a wonderful country. It is huge. It is almost half the size of India, but there are only 2 to 3 million people in the whole of Mongolia. So you can imagine how vast the country is and how sparsely populated it is. It is in Siberia, in the middle of Siberia. It is frightfully cold. In the month of February, the temperature can reach minus 28 degrees centigrade. But then that is what this country is all about. Now, I asked a professor in Mongolia, I asked him, Professor, you have such a beautiful country. Your hero Chinggis Khan, why did he travel thousands of kilometers to the east and thousands of kilometers to the west when he had such a beautiful country? He said, claustrophobia. I said, claustrophobia? How can you have claustrophobia in Mongolia? It's open. He said, we have China on one side, Russia on one side. We feel hemmed in. So when we see the open sea, then we say that we are free. This is what Mongolia is all about. They are expert horsemen. They can travel for thousands of kilometers and go across vast distances. In this background, we have this young lady who is in her first job as a telephone operator in a hotel in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. She connects hotel guests to most of them are foreigners, to their countries when they want to speak to their families. On this day, suddenly a man comes in looking very agitated and saying, could you please connect me to my country? My son is very ill and I need to talk to my family, please. Now this young girl, she goes out of her way. She tries her best and she connects this man to his family. The man speaks outside for quite a while. And suddenly she finds that the man has left without paying, without making payment. She is devastated. Now the hotel asks her to pay back this amount, which she could not realize from the man. Now, she was a proud person. She kept her head up, and with her meager salary and undergoing tremendous hardships, she managed slowly to pay back this debt. Now we're talking about this debt. But in the end, she found love and happiness. And she had no complaints. Now, we are now going to talk about the debt. How can such a debt not exist? It can exist if there is no communication between organizations, between the hotel and the telephone authorities and the central exchange. Now, they did not realize that the bill that day was not payable. And the effort on the part of the young lady went on. So the details are in the story. We'll see the story.
We'll see to it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, in the next story, the doctor, a brilliant young doctor from Cameroon, reunites with his family and wife, which is a blessing in disguise. But actually, what made him drift away from his family?
Yes, this is a brilliant young doctor from Cameroon who reunites with his wife. Cameroon is a country in West Africa. It has got different social norms. Most families have their own children to look after. and also the children of their brother, in case the brother wants his children looked after. So the elder brother agrees to look after his children as well. So very often families can drift apart because of lack of resources. Now, in this case, from what I understood from Dr. Itonga, incidentally, he saved my life. What I understood from Dr. Itonga was that his family drifted apart, not because of lack of resources, but because of excess of resources. Dr. Itonga was serving in Juba, in the UN clinic in South Sudan. The salary and allowances that was given to him was far too much for an ordinary Cameroonian family to handle. There was mistrust, misunderstanding, jealousies. So this, I believe, is what led to the two sides drifting apart. Fortunately, there was a blessing in disguise in the form of an incident where the police was involved in making a false arrest, and Dr. Itonga was able to, he decided to give up his work in Juba and go back to his family and start a medical clinic. He was also a doctor. So that is how it ended.
Well, in the prison island in Zanzibar, which is very interesting, an old fisherman out in the sea links the history of Zanzibar and its fortunes to the love story of a princess. How can the fortunes of a nation be linked to the private life of a young princess?
Well, this is set in Zanzibar, as you say. Zanzibar, as you know, is an island off the east coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean. It is a unique island. In its heyday, Zanzibar had rivaled London in commercial importance. It had electric street lamps before London had them. Now, this young princess was one of the daughters of the Sultan, the Omani Sultan. She was an expert horseman. She could recite the Quran by heart. She knew mathematics. She could handle protocols in the palace, between the intrigues. She could correspond independently with diplomats and dignitaries. So the advisor to the Sultan went to the Sultan and said, "Your Highness, you have an asset here. Why don't you use her for governance work in your cabinet?" While the Sultan was considering this, the princess met a German trader while horse riding and fell in love. The news spread like wildfire across Zanzibar. And the Sultan told the advisor to tell the princess that this cannot be tolerated. She must leave or be banished. The advisor went to the Sultan and said to the Sultan, "Your Highness, you have an asset in this princess." She reminded the advisor of Queen Fatima, who was one of the most successful queens of Zanzibar, her capabilities. And that he said that his German to-be husband was willing to embrace the faith. So he said, "Let them be here. Let her be in your cabinet. Let the German stay and build bridges with the British and the Germans who are trying to destabilize Zanzibar." The Sultan did not agree. Now we all know that the actions of our rulers affect our lives. So when the Sultan did not agree, the princess left suddenly one night for Aden, never to return. After that, the Sultan died soon thereafter. And the next Sultan was not found acceptable by the British. They started shelling Zanzibar from the sea. And it went down from that time onwards to what it is today. So they say that it is the princess, the fact that the princess went away, that led to the fall of Zanzibar. And most people believe it to be true.
I was really astonished to find that a young conscientious officer in South Sudan government officer. I mean, he was jailed because he couldn't pay the bride price of his bride, whom he loved very much. How could that be? I mean, does this happen that you cannot pay the bride price and therefore you are jailed?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, South Sudan is a newly established country in Africa. It's landlocked. And it is one of the newest, it is the newest country in the world. People there are divided into tribes, the Nuer tribe, the Dinka tribe. Now, their custom is that when a man marries his bride, he is expected to pay to the bride's father the cost of bringing up the bride that has been incurred by the father and in educating her. This amount is negotiated prior to the wedding, and it is an accepted social custom. It's a custom that has been handed down from Sudan, and it is a prevalent custom in many parts of the Middle East. Now, in this case, if the amount agreed to is not deposited in time, then the bride's family can lodge a complaint which can have serious complications and can result in arrest. This is what happened in this case. And we were fortunate, I was fortunate to be able to help the groom's uncle raise the funds. The bride price is usually paid in heads of cattle, sometimes in cash. But that is what the custom is in South Sudan.
In the landlady, I find that a wealthy landlady in Jordan regains a second husband, an Iraqi dentist. And she's fulfilled and happy to regain her second husband. And she behaves highly like a liberated woman, but she's an Arab in the Middle East. How can that be? Is there any dichotomy between this?
Not really. This is set in Amman, Jordan, which is an affluent kingdom, the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. It is close to the River Jordan, the West Bank. Now, here is a case in which her husband is accused of a transgression. And she behaves in a very liberated way, like any liberated person would behave under the circumstances. But it was later proved that the transgression was not serious. And therefore, she took back her second husband, the Iraqi dentist. The Iraqi dentist had nowhere to go because this was in the middle of the US-Iraq war and there was no travel allowed. Well, basically because the landlady was an affluent person. Now, when you are affluent, then these things are not so strictly applicable. That is why she was able to behave so much like a very liberated person anywhere in the world.
I also find that you also had a premonition when you went to Kalahari Desert and as a visitor, and you are pursued by a strong premonition. My question is premonition a feeling of death, the equivalent of an evil spirit?
Absolutely, they say. Now, this is the story of a person out in the Kalahari Desert by himself, looking for black-maned Kalahari lions and other animals. He spends the day going right around the place, but he is pursued by a strong premonition, a feeling of dread, if something dreadful is going to happen at any time. Now, they say in Africa that such premonitions are actually demons, that they are chasing you. Africa is a very old continent. And there are many, many forces at play. Many of them are not comprehensible. So this person was chased by this premonition of death. He did not give it too much importance because he was an outsider and he took risks which he should never have taken to go and look for lions. He could have been killed. But later they told me that he did not get killed basically because he was good at heart. This is what the Africans say. Now, let me tell you about another similar incident which I experienced. I went to see eagles flying off a cliff in a place called Otse in Botswana. In the cliff. And then when we were coming back, we learned about a rock which had special powers, a rock. So we asked, where was this rock? And we were shown where the rock was. They told me that it is covered by a perimeter fencing and there is a gate which is open. But they also told me, don't go inside the gate. Just take a look at the rock and carry on. But my friend and I decided to go inside. The moment we entered, I felt a force hitting me, saying, go away, go away, go away immediately. It was so strong that we had to turn the car around immediately and leave. Once we were on the road, there was nothing. It's peaceful. So these things happen in Africa. As I said, it's very ancient. It's an ancient continent. We fully understood.
We find that a king in the hill tracts of Bangladesh prefers to give up his kingdom and live in exile rather than break the word he had given to a defeated government. One would say that this is carrying things too far. Well, what do you say? Is there a local connection? Is there a local connection to this story?
I agree with you totally. This is carrying things too far. Now, we give our words to people to do this, promise to do that. But if events overtake us and unexpected outcomes are there, we always try to adjust. Everybody understands. Everybody understands. But then here is a person gave his word to support a government which lost an election and left. He did not withdraw his support. He continued to support the government by going on in exile and leaving his kingdom. Now, this is quite unique, I should think. It's not called for, but he did that. I think there is another example of such a thing happening anywhere. Now, this is a level of integrity that can rarely be matched. I don't think it is there anywhere. So, could he have avoided it? Absolutely. He was in good terms with the other side as well. And with a little bit of tact, little passage of time, he could easily have done nothing about it. Now, he did it. Is there a local connection? Absolutely. The local connection is very strong. This king who went into exile, leaving his kingdom, is the great grandson of Brahmananda Keshav Chandra Sen. His aunt was the Maharani Gayatri Devi of Jaipur. So with lineage like that, I suppose this is the level of integrity you are expected to demonstrate. And this king was the first cousin of my friend in school and in college. So that's how strong the local connection is.
Well, I was also, taken aback by seeing that in The Housewife, the misadventure of a housewife, led to almost cost the life of a lady. But she survives and brings her family together. Why did she go for this misadventure?
We all know that the actions of our leaders impinge drastically on our lives. Now, President Robert Mugabe felt that the large tracts of land that were in the possession of Europeans in Zimbabwe needed to be taken back and redistributed to the locals. Now, such an exercise was unthinkable and is unthinkable in Africa. And the Western powers decided to decimate Robert Mugabe. Now, in the process, the country suffered economically. And this young housewife, upper middle class, found herself without food on the table, not able to pay for her daughter's school fees. Her husband was in South Africa without a job. So she decided to earn money by going to a different country, which was a very risky venture. But she did it without bitterness or rancor. And she brought her family together through her courage. Now, this is the story of her grit and determination.
We also find some emotional and psychological link between the gorilla and human beings. In your story, The Gorilla, where we find that the massive silverback in the Virunga Mountains near the Congo laughs at visitors like a human and develops emotional links with the trackers. Can animals do such things? Dr.
Yes,
Chaudhary.
indeed. You see, a silverback is a male gorilla who's the head of the family. They live in the rainforests of the Congo at the border of Uganda, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, he is used to seeing visitors come every now and then to see him and his family and take photographs. But on this particular day, a young male gorilla in his family, in an act of bravado, decided to run past the visitors, brushing past the people standing there. It brushed past my trousers. And it also brushed past an American family standing next to me. This sent the woman into hysterics. She was petrified and she started weeping. Now she was quickly taken away. And the male gorilla, the massive silverback, weighing perhaps over 220 kilograms, looked at all this, threw his head back and laughed, just like a man would laugh in a bar or a man would laugh sitting in a charpai. Now, we saw that. They say that working with gorillas makes you forget that they are animals. They have personalities and you learn to respect them for their dignity. Gorillas and human beings, DNAs are 80% in common. 7 million years ago, they started from the same source and branched out. Now, if you look at the trackers who look after the gorillas in the rainforest, they are also something like, a little bit like the gorillas. So this is a story of that gray area in the rainforests of the Congo, where the animal practically meets the man and the man practically meets the animal.
Oh, your last story of your storybook ended with a very positive note. When we find that a disappointing trip to the Victoria Falls turns out to be a blessing for a hardworking secretary of the Botswana government. She found no water in the falls that day. But when she came back, she found that she had received a promotion from her bosses and a pay hike. But my question is, how can there be no water in the Victoria Falls on the mighty Zambezi?
Indeed, this disappointing trip to the Victoria Falls turned out to be a blessing for this hardworking secretary in the government of Botswana. She was working, she was attending a conference not far away from the Victoria Falls. So she decided to take off half the day to go and see the falls. She was from the Kalahari Desert. She had never seen much water, a little bit of rain perhaps. She had never seen a lake. She had never seen a waterfall, so she wanted to see the mighty Victoria Falls on the mighty Zambezi with its enormous amounts of water. But when she went there, she found there was no water. People were cycling across the dry cliff face. Why? They say because of global warming. If there is no rainfall in the upper hills, upper regions of Angola, then it is possible that there will be water in the upper reaches of the Zambezi and in the lower reaches of the Zambezi, but nothing in the Victoria Falls. This is what happened. So she was so disappointed, she decided to go back to the conference immediately, and they went back. So they came back early, and she was surprised to get a prize from the Ministry for Good Work. And she also got an opportunity to interact with her superior officers. And they decided to give her an advancement. Now, she told me later that this advancement meant that her children had 4 boys. She was a single mother bringing up 4 children. This advancement would give her children better food, fruits, and it would allow her to buy new school uniforms. So the not having water in the Zambezi was a blessing in disguise. Now, I would just take 1 second to say how surprising it is. It is like our going to Guwahati and find the Brahmaputra to be a rivulet or something like that. So, but it happened, and it can happen. Thank you. My 10 stories. My publisher is excellent.
Thank you, Dr. Amitava Chaudhary, for your patience in answering my questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your deliberation.
Yeah.
And now over to Chaitali Chaudhary for the questions from the audience.
Yes, there is one question here from Siddhartha Dev. Are the stories based on facts or your imagination, sir? To Dr. Amitava Chaudhary. Are the stories based on facts or your imagination?
They are absolutely based on facts, but they are also based on my imagination. The two have come together to form the stories. The framework is the facts, and the rest of it is imagination. And it's like that.
Another question, I think it is from Adip Kumar Guptu. It is what was your most frightening and happiest moments? What was your most frightening and happiest moment?
Happiest moment while traveling, or when? When?
Yeah, in all the countries you visited, the stories you've written on your real experience, what was your most frightening moment?
Frightening was definitely the Kalahari. It was very frightening.
In Africa.
It was very frightening. And
happiest moment?
And happiest, I would say that when I used to go snorkeling in the Caribbean, it was very, very nice. The water was warm and it was beautiful. That is the happiest one.
So now we have come to the end of the discussion. It was beautiful, and stories, short stories, as well as the descriptions, the explanations given by Dr. Chaudhary, we have enjoyed them all through. So
thank you very much.
With your permission, can I go to the vote of thanks?
Thank you. Yeah.
Now it is time for the vote of thanks. First, we take the opportunity to thank the author, Dr. Amitava Chaudhary, for having given us the opportunity to travel ideally to all the countries he had visited. Next, we would like to extend our gratitude to the moderator, Dr. Anjan Chakraborty, for a very engaging and interesting conversation, as if we were traveling it all through. Then our sincere thanks goes to our ever-inspiring president and the IT committee for providing us with the virtual platform. We're extremely thankful to our fellow library subcommittee members and the chairman for making the event a great success. Thank you, Mr. Anushwa Chaudhary, for the introductory part, and also Mr. Romit Deed from the library subcommittee for his technical expertise in guiding us to ensure streaming from Zoom to our YouTube and Facebook platforms for the first time in coordination with the systems team. In this connection, we thank our systems team comprising of Indrajit Basu Thakur and Debashish Nath, and the events team K.G. Rao. Also, we must thank Ms. Piali of Calcutta Club Library for her ever smiling and helping attitude. In conclusion, I would like to thank Mr. Audhip Guptu for initiating, organizing, and managing the 15 virtual sessions so efficiently during his tenure as a chairman of the library subcommittee, and many more sessions to come for the Calcutta Club. His enthusiasm and untiring efforts in handling the programs is truly commendable. There is a special announcement. We would like to mention that the book Ajay and His Tales from Faraway Lands is now available at the library thanks to the author. At the end of the session, I'm happy to announce that our next event is on Thursday, 12th August at 6:30 p.m. Storytelling as Therapy, Tales She Can Tell. We'll have author Roshni Roy in conversation with Tathagata Chaudhuri and Rupa Das. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Amitava Chaudhuri and Dr. Anjan Chakraborty, as well as the introduction by Anushwa Chaudhuri and our chairman, Amit Gupta, and everyone participating in this meeting. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, as well as on behalf of the Calcutta Club Library Subcommittee. Thank you very much. So I request you whether I should end the session.
Before we end the session, we would like to thank you, Chaitanya Chaudhary, for your beautiful vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chaudhary. But before signing off, there's one question which came up while you were speaking. So if Dr. Chaudhary wants to take that, so I'll just take the liberty of 2 more minutes, Dr. Chaudhary. One is a question from Pinak, that photographs and paintings associated with the stories, are they made or designed by you? That's one. And there were a couple of more queries that I had, which which is your personal favorite chapter and why? And if you had the option to go back to any of these places, which would that be and why? Provided, of course, travel resumes. So if you could take these 3 questions. Sorry, Choitali, these came up while you were speaking.
No, I'm sorry, I've missed this question.
More or less through, we have 5 more minutes of Dr. Chaudhary's time.
Yes.
Well, the paintings and the slides that were shown were not created by me. They were given to me by a very capable young lady who was looking after some of the publicity work that is required. She gave me these things. They are her personal property. So she has very kindly given it to me, and I have used it in my life.
Okay.
The second question is, if I would like to go back to any of the countries. Well, I would like to go back basically to Botswana. I think I enjoyed Botswana more than any other African country. Different. I mean, Middle East is different and the Caribbean is different. So I would like to go back to Botswana. And the third question was what? I'm sorry. Third question. These are two.
The third question was, I think one was answered. What was your most frightening and happiest moment? That
Yes.
And if you had the option, which is your personal favorite chapter and why?
Yes. Now, I would say that the telephone operator is my personal favorite. Basically because it is something that what was shocking and the amount of effort that this young lady put in to repay her debt, and then the hotel told her that sorry, we can't pay you back the money because we haven't kept an account of it. It was not required to be paid. He paid it and they didn't return it to her, and she didn't say anything about it. So I think that it is the most touching story, the most difficult experience. As I said, it's a journey of life, a journey we all have to undertake. So she undertook this journey and she came out winner. So I would say that that is my favorite story.
This is another question. Are you writing another collection? This is from Sharupa Chatterjee. Are you writing another collection?
Well, I might at some point in time. But right now, I don't have any concrete plans, but it is in my mind. Yes.
Yes. So we shall be waiting for that too. Eagerly waiting. In fact, our travel very much liked by everyone, and we also liked it very much. And at the end, is there any more questions? I can't see any. So shall we end the session?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So now I request to stop the recording.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would request to stop the recording.
Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary. Back to you, Dr. Chaudhary.